Hello, good morning and welcome to Newsline, broadcasting live from the Independence Square right here in Colombo. And joining me this morning, as usual, is a senior journalist and former diplomat, Bandula Jayasekara. Good morning, Bandula.
Morning for us.
Isn't it wonderful to be here at Independence Square?
Yeah, definitely free and very independent. It's a good start. It's
Absolutely.
a very good beginning.
It's a magical morning, if you ask me. And also joining us this morning is Major General Mano Pereira, the commander of the Army Training Command. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Of course, both these gentlemen are from Trinity.
And he's my classmate, old classmate.
I see.
We came up from kindergarten, and it's good to...
Your debating partner, I believe.
Of course.
Yeah.
And good to meet, join, a fellow Tomin, our brother's school after all.
It's actually gives me a great pleasure to be here at Independence Square. On our right, we have people at the Sports Ministry grounds, and on our left and right around us, people who are doing their walks. And it's a feel-good factor here.
And I would say, with your permission, it's a good beginning, and I really would have liked to thank our chairman for inspiring us to go out on location and reach out to the people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman, for these opportunities. Today is just a few days ahead of the first anniversary of the Kostlanda landslide disaster, which is, I think, the first anniversary falls on the 29th of October. At the time, Major General Mano Pereira was the commander of the security forces for the Central Division. And he was very much part of the relief effort, as was indeed the Capital Maharaja Group in the form of Sirasa, Newsfirst and Shakti TV. Major General, what was the scale of the disaster?
Well, it's a very good question, because the initial report that came out in reference to the Meerabad landslide was that about 300 personnel to be assumed to be dead and a massive landslide. Of course, the area that involved was quite large. But then when we consider the number of casualties, for some luck, majority of the residents of those line rooms that were affected by the landslide were out at that moment. So therefore we had only about 36 dead, or the 36 who lost their lives at the end of the tragedy. But then there were many others who lost their livelihoods, lost their dwellings, and they were displaced. So it was a considerable disaster of considerable magnitude in comparison to the others that we have experienced in the island.
And for a person who's saying that, you've also seen action on the front line.
Definitely, yes. Over my 34 years of service in the army, I have spent quite a lot of time in operational areas, up in the north, in the east, almost all parts of the country.
And Mano, I was told now during our singular program that you worked very closely with our network, and where even you had made requests with Sirasa, Shakti and MTV Newsfirst. And how was your relationship with our group, and how did you work well with us?
Yes, Bandula. Being the army or the defense service, part of the defense services, we are the first respondents in case of disaster. In disaster management, we are the people who move in first, because we have the wherewithal. We are the best contingency managers that we have, with our experience, with our exposure, and we are the best crisis managers of such in such eventuality.
But before you continue, I need to have another question. But the international community says that army should not get involved, the forces should not get involved in such things. What have you got to say to that?
Well, it's an arguable fact, but then it's a established fact world over that the army or the military has a role in disaster management. And there is a specific defined role for disaster management where certain teams are involved. If you see the disaster relief operation that are being carried out elsewhere in the world, in the Philippines, in Nepal, or even in tsunami, we had a lot of military contingents coming in from the Americans, British, all other forces. So it's a task for the military to get involved in disaster management. Because
there has been somewhat heavy criticism of the involvement in the military forces or the military in what is generally perceived as civilian matters.
oh yes, yes. There is this idea that had been formulated and discussed. But then we as an army, which knew the pulse of the people, we sacrifice our lives for the freedom of the people, to gain their freedom, to liberate them. I mean, therefore, we have no bounds when we get into our duty. As a Sri Lankan army, it's a primary duty to ensure the national security. And then it's a secondary duty to assist the country in national calamities and the event of disasters. So it's part of our role.
Of course, the Capital Maharaja Group is no stranger to picking itself up and getting going, Bandula. The awful events in 1983 saw this group brought down to its knees. But a very famous board meeting soon after ensured that the group has picked itself up and recreated itself.
Yeah, and I would say we were not on our knees. We really, I mean,
yes,
they couldn't do that.
They couldn't do it. They
People
tried.
couldn't do that. Yeah,
best.
that's the spirit of this group.
And that is indeed the spirit of
Which
this
I
group.
am experienced during my short period here. You know, that's a very good spirit to have.
And the other thing with, of course, to realize, I'm not sure if you're aware, Major General, but the Sirasa Newsfirst.lk TV, their humanitarian efforts has not gone unnoticed. And recently we had our group director, Mr. Daniel, who was sent off to the UN, or I think he's about to go, to recognize these efforts. And we are the only organization in Asia that has been so recognized. And that must say something. Major General, tell us about the disaster. There were 7 line rooms that were destroyed.
Yes, 7 sets of line rooms, which
Yes.
consisted of about 63 houses. So it's quite a large area, and the entire area got devastated, destroyed because of the landslide. There was heavy rain overnight, and the inundation was such, so beyond 150 millimeters of rain. So it is quite heavy, and the saturation levels may have exceeded, and there was this landslide that took place. But then it cannot be an incident, a spontaneous incident, because there have been signs of disaster, signs of landslide that have been identified by the disaster management and the NBRO, and warning has already been given. In fact, about 5 years before, there have been alternate lands that have been identified, and people have been given the opportunity of relocating themselves. But then due to the lack of teeth with the disaster management and lack of regulatory authority, they could not evacuate these people.
But Mano, their problems are still not solved after 1 year after the disaster. They are still, they don't have proper shelter.
That's right. They're still continuing to suffer.
Yes.
Why is the delay? Where do you get the money from?
Well, the money comes from the government. The government pledged that they will give the houses, and the money came. But then there were a little bit of administrative difficulties that came up with time and again. Initially, a different location was identified to put up the houses. We made a pledge at the army, as the authority who could help them, that we will put up the houses in a period of about 3 months. But then the location was shifted due to various reasons, so beyond our control. And now the new location have been given, it's identified. We have already started construction on that. 4 model houses were completed. There are 12 others which have been completed up to roof level. If the funding is not interrupted, or if there is no delay in funding and resources, we could finish the houses in a very short period of time. It's in the progress. We are doing our best. But then these administrative difficulties that we face due to lack of continuous resourcing, the delay has resulted, and I agree.
Are you being diplomatic by saying
Yes,
administrative difficulties?
Well, not within ourselves, within the civil administration.
Do you feel that there's a mismatch between the urgency with which the army moves and the not so urgency with which the civilian life moves?
Well, civil administration have their own regulatory requirements, so as a result, it could have caused the delay. I can't comment on as to why the delay is, but then it is because we don't get the resources on time.
Coming back for us now, I want to tell our viewers, I was having a chat with Shivan, and then he was telling me, I was not here, but the spirit of human kindness. He was relating a story to me how an elderly lady who had only 500 rupees came to the Cirrus MTV office and gave that and said, this is all what I have, and said support the Sahana Yatra. Then also he related a story how the lorry drivers went, they were full of water, but they didn't even touch a bottle of water from the lorries.
That's right, they bought their own.
Bought their own. So that's really the spirit, how people rallied round. So coming back from there, Mano, my earlier question, how did you work with our group, the channel? Because Cirrus and MTV and Shakti were in the forefront. How did you work with us?
Well, actually, Bandula, media has a big role in disaster management and coordinating disaster relief operations, because disaster relief requirements, they are the people who make the world aware or make the surrounding aware that there is a disaster of this nature that has happened, and the need of the people. If not for the media, we wouldn't have been able to harness all those resources to help them in the hour of need, because the people in the area do not have the wherewithal to support them in a disaster of that magnitude. I am thankful because the media got involved, Cirrus got involved and organized the Cirrus Sahana Yatra. As I have pointed out earlier, the relief items that came with the Cirrus Sahana Yatra was not actually focused only towards assisting those people in Koslanda or in Punagala who were displaced from the media by the disaster. But then by that time there are 40-50 other relief centers that were established. There were landslides all over. The situation was quite untenable. I should say it was not very stable. And as a result, there were a lot of relief centers that were established. People were evacuated. So all the relief items went not only to Koslanda but far beyond into the other areas as well.
Are they still being used?
They are still being used. Of course, Bandula, that was another valid point that you brought out, because to be very frank, there were allegations raised against me saying that I don't allow people to distribute these relief items right to the hands of those who are destitute, who are displaced. But then we had to impose control measures when we saw some of the things that were happening after the initial stuff that came in from Cirrus Sahana Yatra. We saw the people, the beneficiaries trying to sell these things out. So these were collected by our compassionate public. They willingly gave, as you said, even the last bit of savings that they had. But then that is not for those people to sell and earn a living or do something else. So what I thought of, we have control measures. So we gave only the need, the most urgent need of those people right at that time, and then stored the balance under the divisional secretary and their other civil administrative authorities. I am happy to say some of those items that came from Cirrus Sahana Yatra and all other relief mechanisms are still being used. Because after 1 year they are still being used. So if we did not have these control measures, we couldn't have had those being utilized in such a fruitful manner.
I think we should bear in mind that at Capital Maharaja Cirrus MTV, we don't call it CSR, we call it life. Isn't that right, Bandula?
Yeah, that's true. Whilst really politicians are still playing with the lives of people, we have, reached out to the people. That's what, we call ourselves Jatiya Cirrus, or the voice of the nation. That's what it's a lovely place for us to, reach out to the masses.
It's absolutely wonderful behind the statue of DSA.
And also for us, we're talking of like politics. Now, during the Pathikata, the Sinhala program, our presenter Lakna related a story. She didn't want to name names, but I named the names. Where in the recent, there are issues in upcountry where there's still a battle between Tondaman and Digambara at the expense of the masses. That should stop.
And I think a good point that you make, and I'm being reminded that in this program of humanitarian assistance carried out by our group, We have never involved any politician from any party, period. And that's, I think that shows how independent we are.
Yeah, and then all communities, we have managed to get everybody together under one flag. And that also we could really ask Mano the question, how then everybody rallied round, all communities, all 5-6 communities in Sri Lanka, right? That's what we want. It shows the real spirit.
But that's what I said. We have a very compassionate nation who reacts in the hour of need. I mean, there is no caste, creed, religion differences when they react. I mean, that's why we have we had such a lot of relief assistance coming in just couple of days. I mean, even before we ran short of supplies, which would have been otherwise developed into quite a serious problem. So that Sirasa or the Sirasa Sahana Yatra was there at hand at the hour of need.
Major General, I'm going to ask you this question. A new president, a new prime minister, a new defense secretary, and a whole new opportunity. And I know that you are a few months away from your retirement. As you retire, are you comfortable that you leave Sri Lanka in a far better place than when you started?
Well,
in terms of the armed forces and so on?
Yeah, we have progressed a long way since the time I joined the army. The army had advanced, army has been technologically improved. Our know-how has improved in bounds, and experience is unparalleled to any other in this world. And I think, it's my personal opinion, that we are in a much better footing than where we were earlier.
Before, when you started?
Yeah, when I started. So I mean, army is in the safe hands, and also with a very bright future.
Excellent, excellent. Our program is never complete without a little bit of politics, is it, Bandula?
Yeah. You are a politician for us.
Bandula, we noticed that the Ministry of Finance is proposing to introduce some rather draconian retrospective tax laws. They're going to impose some retrospective taxes.
Such as, if you tell the viewers what exactly?
Well, I mean, a retrospective tax is rather unfair. I think this may have happened in Nazi Germany, but never since before. The world has moved away from taxing the wealthy. You don't tax the success. And in Sri Lanka, we have a situation where the current Minister of Finance is proposing to impose special taxes, but retrospectively. So, in essence, a year ago, if a company had decided that this was the cost of a product and then took those things into account and then sold it at a profit, today, in this year, the Ministry of Finance proposes to tax them at a different level, a tax which they weren't aware of at the time.
But I think for us, before all that taxing, they should resolve the central bank issue. I'm sorry to say that, they should resolve all that.
Well, yes.
Then sort it out.
I'm so glad that you've given me the opportunity to...
Your favorite subject.
Yes, it's almost a thesis.
We need to resolve. People want answers. Why go for that when you have a problem? When the President has said, he advised the Prime Minister.
That's right.
So why don't you listen to that and then do that? First walk the talk.
Indeed, they must walk the talk. And that brings us to another bit of where they haven't quite walked the talk. And that is to do with the unfortunate, and because we are here at Independence Square, this comes to my mind, is the killing of Lasantha Wickrematunge. Obviously, this is his government, so to speak. The UNP is, anyway. Yeah. And we have not had any apparent progress on that. Does that make you sad, Bandula?
Yeah, it is.
Despondent, maybe?
Yeah, I think, everybody is waiting for answers. It does make you sad.
Indeed, it does. There are many issues that this government needs to address, not least of all starting off with the bond issue, but the retrospective taxes is another matter.
Yeah, so they are in the dream world. That is what, they are in their own worlds, but I don't think they are not really, we don't have grassroots politicians. I mean, like I'm saying, President Premdasa was a grassroots politician. They don't know the pulse of the people like what we know as a TV station, as the media, even general said it even in our single program. We know the pulse of the people. That's where we reach out. But they do not know. That is the problem. They are, I mean, most of these people, I'm saying, some of these most of the ministers, they are in the cocktail circuit. They don't understand.
And I think another part of this is this, that you know, we can't help it. We, as our network, our company, our group, can't help it if the people apparently trust us more than they do them. We move fast, and we move fast because the decision-making process is so designed at this group.
And like we discussed also, we have become the real opposition for us. For us, I need to know, since we are at the Independence Square and since we have a Major General here, I want to ask this question with your permission. Now, I've been walking around here, and when these governments changed, there is a cafe down there called Walker's Cafe. Right? There's a Walker's Cafe, which I asked this from our Mayor Muzamil. It was run by the forces. It was run very well by the forces. I mean, they had everything there available. Now, after the change, you know, they took it off and gave it to the private sector, to some of the private party, not the sector, private individuals. It's not doing well. But still, the Air Force, all this is still, they're maintaining it. Why is that? You know, I mean, the forces did well. Why do you think this happened? Because we appreciate the discipline, and it was doing very well, and most of the workers benefited. So
I'm not sure that Major General should be drawn into this.
No, I'm sure, you know, we can. I'm sure he can give a diplomatic answer.
Well, do you want to answer?
The role of the army is well defined, so we get involved in the task that we have to perform as deliberated by the Minister of Defence.
Or even the Secretary of Defence at one time.
Yeah, but they are back to, the forces are back to cleaning and back to all this. They are still doing it. When we said not, that's it. So,
well, I think, you know, this government, this UNP government,
no,
it is not, but the UNP component of this government, we must be politically right, is of course committed to a capitalist society. And in this capitalist society, the army have no place to be running.
Then why do the taxation if they say that?
Yes, well,
how come the taxation?
Well, this is it.
And Mr. Karan, the finance minister is a big
let's ask Major General Mano one other question related back to this Koslanda disaster, which is one year anniversary is due soon. When do you think these houses will be complete?
As I told you earlier, we are in the process of completing them. I suppose once the funding comes through, and if there is uninterrupted funding and the resourcing, we should be able to complete in a very short period of time. It's all a matter of the resources being pumped in at the correct time.
No, I'm told that some of the houses that have actually already been given don't have these sort of ancillary facilities like water and so on. Is that something you're looking into?
Yes, certainly, because the project is not being completed as yet. The houses are not being given. Not a single house has been given. They would have been talking about this temporary accommodation that we provided at the Ampitikanda factory, which we renovated to a certain degree and then made it suitable for that temporary period that we actually planned for. And the resources were there, the water supply, the infrastructure was there. We tried to put them in place as much as possible. But then once the civil administration took over, there was a little bit of a problem of this water supply and things like, but I suppose they will be sorting this problem.
It seems that the civilian administration is always a problem. Do you feel personally that every young person before going off to university or when he's reached 18 should serve 2 years in the military, like we have in some other countries?
Yeah, that's a policy to be a decision to be taken at the highest level of the government. They'll have to think about all these sentiments of the public and then decide on their own, because we need not adopt whatever that is there in any other country, but whatever that is suitable for our country. So that's, I suppose, the decision should be kept to the government.
And a final question on the landside matter. What will happen to the actual site of the landside?
Well, if you ask the geologists or the NBRO, they will tell you that they'll have a period. There is a period of settlement. So until the settlement period is over, you can't do anything in that site because it's susceptible to landslide once again. And it has been recorded that this area has experienced landslide a few hundred years ago. So that is why Coastlanda have been identified as an area that is prone to landslides. So these things will be there. NBRO has identified a lot of places. Actually, I must mention that the Disaster Management Center has done a wonderful job. They have prepared the GIS maps, which gives all these details of landslide prone area, disaster prone areas, and in detail. So if this can be accessed, and then people could be more aware of the dangers that surrounding them. And
thank you. And Major General, if members of the public want to continue to help these victims, how do they do that?
Well, in this case, if they want to help the victims at Meeriabadda, they'll have to contact the Ministry of Disaster Management or the Disaster Management Center. They are the people who are coordinating all these relief efforts at the moment, and resettlement and reintegration activities and so on.
Thank you, Major General. He said that they'll have to contact a ministry. My initial reaction was, oh no.
Same with me, and that's why there's a delay.
Yes.
That's what, even getting relief, there was a delay. That's really, I think, we came in.
But let me tell you,
indeed,
if you compare the history of disasters in Sri Lanka and the casualty that we have experienced, in 1978 there was this cyclone that affected Polonnaruwa, Mana, that area. Yeah, and we were school officers, the Prefect Guild of Trinity, we went and helped them, we put up houses. The casualties at that time was about 917 or 920 dead. But when you consider the flood situations that Sri Lanka experienced in 2003, 2010, the casualty figures have reduced considerably. That is because the disaster management system is effective. It takes some time for them to get these things organized. And now it is quite in practice, and all the agencies or the stakeholders are getting involved the moment there is a disaster. So the response is much better than what it was. So Disaster Management Center actually is doing a yeoman service, but then they do not have the teeth in certain areas to activate some of those requirements, and also to get the relief assistance organized in the manner that you all are expecting it to be done. It's so fast.
I like that.
And so fast and in a timely manner.
Mr. General, I am told reliably that there are vacancies at the Foreign Office for diplomats such as you. So maybe in your retirement you want to go and work in the diplomatic service. Thank you very much for that. In fact, when it comes to thanks, we need to say thank you to the people who have always responded overwhelmingly to requests in terms of disasters, and especially to our request, ours as in the Maharaja Group. And in fact, the Maharajas will represent Sri Lanka in Geneva next week, and that is a wonderful testimony to our efforts.
Our humanitarian
efforts, irrespective of caste, creed, or anything else for that matter. So thank you very much. And Major General Manopera, thank you very much for being on our network. We appreciate your presence.
Thank you. Thanks, It's been a great pleasure.
Bandula, thank you very much.
Thank you. But for us, I would always I would want you to remind our viewers about our guest tomorrow.
Indeed. And who is this guest tomorrow?
Because for us, we'll be stargazing tomorrow. We'll be joined by
the one and only, the inimitable, the delectable Geeta
Kumarasinghe, Member of Parliament.
Member of Parliament. We hope to bring some color and flavor tomorrow. Not that we don't do that every week. And I'll leave you with this thought. Don't lose yourself trying to be everything to everyone. On that note, have a good morning and God bless.